Ahead in American Sunrise Early Edition, President Trump has had it now that the Wall Street Journal is publishing a story insinuating that he may have been the friend of Jeffrey Epstein. The president now wants all the Epstein files to be released, or at least the ones he can get away with, presumably to sweep that speculation aside. Beating the clock, the House votes 216 to 213 to pass that $9+ billion spending cut bill that includes eliminating all federal funding for NPR and PBS. President Trump will likely sign it today. Speaking of cutting off funding, Scott Bessent's Treasury Department slapped severe financial sanctions on the leaders of Trinidad and other illegal alien gangs. The sanctions aren't so much meant for those gang leaders, but for those who dare to do business with them. Speaking of doing business with illegals, the feds and local cops bust up a unique visa fraud ring that includes phony robbery reports at Subway and bribed police chiefs in Louisiana. This story is something else. So is this the time to be talking about some kind of amnesty bill? A couple of Republicans are supporting a plan to give illegals a pass now. Talk about very bad timing, but you have good timing because you're in time to watch American Sunrise Early Edition, which begins now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition, the show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds, that's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Good morning and welcome to this No Tie Friday edition of American Sunrise Early Edition. Oh, we morning news guys and gals live for days like this when there was so much key breaking news after probably a number of you went to sleep, if you went to sleep at a decent hour. So let's get right to it. I want to talk first about this news that's come out thanks to the Wall Street Journal. A real development in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Here's what happened for those of you who may have missed it. Wall Street Journal publishing this story. Well, first this story, and then they had another story, but we'll have two headlines here. First, again, here you see this. Trump calling for the release of pertinent, as they're saying, pertinent Epstein files following this WSJ article. And the article was the other one about how purportedly President Trump wrote a letter. Here it is. Wrote a letter in honor of Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday all the way back in 2003. I want you to take a look at the end of that headline because this is the issue here that probably could trip them up, the Wall Street Journal, in court or in a lawsuit. It says the letter was from Donald Trump. There's really nothing in the article that actually verifies that. And if you take a look at the excerpts of the letter that most of us have seen overnight, again, if you haven't had a chance because you were sleeping, the letter includes riddles. It includes an illustration. I don't think Donald Trump has ever drawn a comic picture before. It's very, very doubtful that he wrote that letter. Now, it's possible that he signed off on it, that someone else wrote it, and he said, yeah, okay, whatever, send him something. But the letter from Donald Trump and the headline, that could really, really be a major legal problem for the Wall Street Journal. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, some inside dope that you probably might have guessed about newspapers. This is true of websites, too, and sometimes even television news stations. The actual reporters don't ever write the headlines with very, very few exceptions. Almost never happens. So it's a different headline. And usually the editors who write the headlines, for the most part, are not very senior at a paper. So this could be a very mid-level or even junior editor. And that was a huge story, so I assume they brought some senior people into it. But that is what's going to nail them here. I don't think that this letter was actually written by Donald Trump. The only question is whether he signed off on it or not. And even if he did, that doesn't prove anything. Did he really know Jeffrey Epstein? Was he connected to him? And of course, this has spurred Donald Trump to do what I think a lot of us wanted him to do in the first place, which is to tell Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, to go to court and release the grand jury files and some other files that can be released to the public right away. And Pam Bondi immediately putting on her social media account that she's on her way to do that today. So we're going to get, I think, a good result from this Wall Street Journal chicanery. Actually, I don't think the Wall Street Journal wanted this to happen, but I think we will get some more information as we've always wanted. But I have to tell you, this is a legal problem for the Wall Street Journal because of that headline. Headlines are what about 90% of the people see. They don't necessarily read the rest of the article. And so you can't say, well, this was just a small part of the article. It wasn't something that we really looked at. This was something that was probably looked at, probably written by someone kind of junior, but okayed and signed off on by someone who's a little bit more senior at the Wall Street Journal. This isn't going to go well for the Journal. I can just tell you this right now. It's not going to go well. It's going to be another one of those situations like CBS and the 60 Minutes Kamala Harris interview. I think that this was a mistake. Now, President Trump posting on his own Truth Social account that he was in contact with Rupert Murdoch, the owner of the Wall Street Journal. Yes, he's also the owner of Fox News. Those of you, and many of you know that, and asked him to take care of it. President Trump says Rupert Murdoch said he would, but of course it didn't get taken care of. This, of course, will also start from the left-wing media a lot of squawking about how President Trump's trying to stifle the news media, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, let me tell you something who has personal experience with this. The Obama administration and the Biden administration worked reporters pretty hard, too. I got my fill of threatening emails and calls to my bosses when I was doing stories about the Obama administration for years. So, they can put that in a corner. That's what everyone does. They always try to work the reporters when they feel like a bad story is coming out about them. That's nothing new. So don't be fooled by that. I love to preempt lies on this program. They're going to lie to you about a bunch of things, so I want to preempt that right away. Both right-wing, left-wing, Democrat, Republican presidents and politicians try to suppress stories all the time and make calls to publishers. That is a daily occurrence in D.C. and New York. But the problem here is, again, that the Wall Street Journal reported this in a headline and basically said it in the headline as fact, that this letter for this birthday book for Jeffrey Epstein with a bunch of jokes in it and riddles, and a bunch of other people wrote stuff purportedly, was from Donald Trump. They put that as a fact in the headline. That's a problem. That's a problem. But it does seem to have started the whole process of releasing some of these Epstein files to the public. So I guess we all win in the end for those of us who wanted to see this story and get more details about it in the end. All right. We also don't think that was the only breaking news overnight, folks. We also had the House of Representatives passing that rescission bill overnight. And this is, again, that $9 billion plus cut in spending, $9 billion plus cut in spending. A number of you on Getter and Rumble have made the good point that $9 billion is less than a drop in the bucket when it comes to all of our deficits and our debt. You are 100% right about that mathematically. But please understand that there is a symbolic value of cutting federal funding to NPR and PBS that goes way beyond the $1 billion or so that's going to be taken out of their pockets right now. It is very important because it's always been really, really difficult to make those cuts. And if you can get cuts out of NPR and PBS, there's going to be a lot of other programs worth a lot more money, mathematically, that we're now going to be able to get to, because if you can do it to NPR and PBS, and they've deserved it for a long time, then you can do it to anyone. And one more thing I want to note about that story. NPR and PBS haven't been shy about reporting on this rescission bill for days and days and days now. And they've been reporting on the overall story of federal funding to NPR and PBS for years. Here's the problem. Every single time that NPR or PBS publishes a story about their funding, there's an inherent conflict of interest. You're writing about your own funding source. And every time they do it, they prove the overall point, which I would like to make, I'm sure a lot of you agree with, that there should never be government-funded news media anyway. How can you possibly report on the government or anything the government is doing in an even somewhat fair way when you're relying on government funding? Now, some newspapers and websites and television networks might be overly favorable to a government because that's where their bread is buttered. Some of them might go overboard and be totally unfavorable in some way of proving that they're not so reliant on government money. Either way, there's an inherent conflict of interest. They shouldn't be even reporting on it. And if you can't report on an important story like that, what are you even in the business for? We shouldn't have government-funded news media. I know a lot of other countries do it. I don't care. We shouldn't have it, period. One of the things that really could have strengthened NPR and PBS in a big way is if they got rid of their news divisions and were only doing so-called artistic and educational stuff, which also, by the way, sometimes is very left-leaning and very partisan, but less so. They would have gotten away with it, too, if it weren't for those darn kids. All right, that's a Scooby-Doo reference, which will never be on PBS, but maybe it should be. All right, there's another story that broke, not overnight, but yesterday afternoon, and it's an important one. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sanctioning Tren de Aragua and some other illegal alien gangs and such across the country. Now, some of you might be saying, These gang members are wanted for, and leaders are wanted for murder and for a lot worse than some of their financial stuff. What's the point of this? Isn't this just like adding a few more charges? No, that's not the point. The point is, when you are sanctioned economically by the U.S. government, anyone doing business with you, forget about the person that they're sanctioning or the organization they're sanctioning, anyone doing business with them is now liable for prosecution. Are you listening to me? Sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. If you come up with some kind of a deal to allow Tren de Aragua to go into a housing project, hello Colorado, or give them money, like with gift cards, hello LA and New York City, then the politicians who allow that could be sanctioned along with the, as part of this overall sanction. Just saying, as the kids say these days. This could be a huge problem, not only for actual businesses or shady businesses doing business with these guys, but also the politicians and the political entities. Watch out for that. Now, with all of this going on with illegal immigration, Republicans, some Republicans like Maria Salazar of Florida, think this is the time to float an amnesty bill. Is she crazy? There's a couple of Republicans joining Democrats yesterday came out and called for an amnesty bill, not for all illegal aliens, but for a good number of them. This is, again, another case of, do these people read the polls? Of course they read the polls. They see these polls that have come out that have shown, even in the New York Times, a very clear majority of Americans want all illegal aliens deported. They don't want amnesty. They want them all deported, even the more sympathetic cases. So what's their problem? Are they illiterate? No, they're not illiterate. This is yet another case, I believe, of funding. This is campaign funding or other kinds of funding going to these politicians. We've seen it with Democrats, getting them to embrace politically unpopular, to say the least, positions, like supporting illegal aliens, going to visit them in El Salvador, saying that you're going to hand-deliver cash cards to wherever they're living, like LA Mayor Karen Bass. They know these things are politically unpopular, but they're getting so much funding and so much pressure from donors. That's why they're doing this, and they're hoping to get away with it. I'm afraid Maria Salazar is another one of them. This is not politically popular now. It's as unpopular as I can ever remember it being, by the way, as far as the polls are concerned. I'm sure a lot of the left-wing pollsters are shocked that despite all the sob stories that they've been putting out about families getting separated, the American public is stronger on this than I can ever remember it being. Okay, coming up, we're going to get back to illegal immigration in a minute. Wait until you hear the details of visa fraud and bribery out of the state of Louisiana. It confirms so many suspicions about the visa program and then some. And then there's very disturbing new evidence in that Air India crash investigation. I'll have the details on that and more when American Sunrise Early Edition continues. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. It's a No Tie Friday as we take a live look at the White House and those new flagpoles. Now, the flagpole in the back of the White House is flying very nicely in the wind, not so much the front. I don't know, talk about different weather patterns in different parts of the city. That's really saying something. Man, Washington in July and August is just not the best place to be. That's all I can say. I got to tell you about this real doozy of an illegal immigration story here on American Sunrise Early Edition. This is a scam that the FBI broke open this week in the Baton Rouge area of Louisiana. An Indian-American Subway sandwich shop owner, his name is Chandrakant Patel, he had been making claims over about a 10-year period about robberies at his shop. So, the local cops and the FBI started to get a little suspicious because this guy's shop was getting robbed all the time. I mean, a lot. Well, they figured out why he was doing this. It turns out the American visa program, one of its many interesting nuances, is if you are a victim of a crime here in the United States and you're an immigrant here on a visa, you can get an extended, basically almost indefinite visa as basically some kind of a reward or some kind of compensation from the U.S. government. That's what you can get. Incredible. So, of course, he was using these robbery reports as a scam. There's only one problem. When you have a robbery report, the cops come to your store and have to corroborate it. You can't just say you were robbed and collect the insurance money and get a bunch of visas for your friends. Well, this guy Patel had that figured out, and he bribed a number of police officers, 3 of them police chiefs, according to the FBI. Another one was another officer, former and current police chiefs, and they were indicted as well yesterday in Louisiana. This is an incredible story of just how much the visa situation in this country is abused. I promise you, this one story out of Baton Rouge is not unique. There's probably a number of other businesses doing this. If you're interested, if you're an investigative reporter or if you're a cop somewhere, take a look at some of the businesses that keep getting robbed or reportedly robbed and see what's going on with visas connected to that. This is an interesting story. My guess is there's going to be other ones like it, but my goodness. Listen, Subway has some good sandwiches, but it's not worth robbing it 10 times a month. Let's put it that way. All right. Serious story now, one that I've been reporting on here on American Sunrise Early Edition, and it just keeps getting worse. I want to talk about that Air India crash last month that killed 260 people. Now, we learned earlier this week and late last week that the cause of the crash in the preliminary investigation said over the weekend was because the fuel switches were switched off, cutting off fuel to the engines just as the jet was taking off. That's obviously not a good thing. Now, we also learned during that preliminary report over the weekend and into Monday that those switches really can't be switched off automatically. They have to be switched off with someone with their hands, with a pilot with their hands. It just does not happen otherwise. Well, now the latest report out of the Wall Street Journal, doing some reporting, that's good, says that the pilot, that the black box recording shows that the co-pilot notes to the senior pilot, hey, those switches are down. And the co-pilot gets exceedingly agitated, as you might expect, and worried about that, while the senior pilot says there's no problem and is very, very calm. It just seems more and more like this was a deliberate suicide by the pilot. Of course, not just for him, but for the other 260 people who died. This is not unprecedented. We saw this in the late 1990s with the Egypt air crash out of JFK with the pilot who committed suicide and decided to take a 747 jet load of people with him. This is an absolute disgrace and a failure of the mental health care system that has some kind of screening program for pilots at Air India. But it certainly is a harrowing story. We'll keep you updated on this. This is not a surprise based on what we saw on Monday. Actually, this is something that a lot of people suspected the moment that jet crashed. But the responsible folks out there weren't going to say anything until they got some evidence. Now we have some evidence. Okay. Well, an organic skincare brand called Purience has been turning heads recently in Elle Magazine, Cosmopolitan, and LA Weekly. Why? Because to date they've helped over 60,000 women to fall in love with their skin complexion again. Purience delivers clean, organic skincare without harsh preservatives. Their Cellular Restore Serum features a gentle alternative to retinol called Baciol. In a small focus group, 92.9% of women saw fewer wrinkles after just 3 weeks of applying that Cellular Restore Serum. Their Cellular Hydration Serum contains tremella mushroom, which hydrates the deepest layers of skin better than hyaluronic acid. Then there's Lift and Glow Organic Eye Cream. If you want to lighten the appearance of dark under eye circles and restore a radiant complexion, then you'll love Lift and Glow. Finally, they have Even Glow Serum. Even Glow features Kadaku Plum, which delivers 100 times more concentrated vitamin C than oranges. Even Glow works wonders for reducing dark spot appearance. And right now, for a limited time, you can save 35% on all Purience products. Simply go to Purience.com and enter coupon code EARLY at checkout. That's PUREANCE.com and coupon code EARLY to save 35% on your order today. Coming up, a win for all you vapors out there, but maybe a loss for the Make America Healthy Again crowd. American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. A look at the Capitol Dome this morning in Washington, D.C. They worked late again in that building, and the House did pass by a 216 to 213 vote that $9 billion plus rescission package that, of course, the highlight of it is the $1 billion funding yank away from NPR and PBS, taking away all their federal funding now. So some big news, and I think that President Trump will sign that probably today. I can't imagine he would wait. And that's what we got going on. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. It's a No Tie Friday. Let's take a look at where the markets will begin today. We have 2 days of rallies going for 3. Will it be a third day? Very, very flat, as you can see, in the green, but very flat right now. These markets we really don't have much of an idea where they're going to end up based on what you're looking at there right there. Gold is up, though, $33.57 an ounce. Crude oil also up, back up to the $68 a barrel level, but still clearly under $70. Let's take a look at Bitcoin and see if it's reaching any new highs. No, it's at 119,000. So I'm calling it. For weeks we were in a window of 104,000 to 110,000 on Bitcoin. Weeks and weeks and weeks. We finally broke out of that. Got as high as I think 122. Certainly at least 121. So now I am calling the new window. The new window is between 117 and 121. And we're right smack dab in the middle of that right now at 119. Okay, will they or won't they? Will Coca-Cola really only use pure cane sugar and not corn syrup and what God knows what else to sweeten their drinks? Now, President Trump announced the other day, I think it was Wednesday, that Coca-Cola had agreed to only use pure cane sugar. Coca-Cola still hasn't acknowledged that. But, again, as I say on this program all the time, what do the people with skin in the game tell us about the reality of that story? Well, yesterday, those investors told us at the beginning of the day that they thought that story was true because Archer Daniels Midland, which is a big artificial sweetener maker, they make a lot of other farm byproducts, I'll call them. And I used to work in Archer Daniels Midland's hometown of Decatur, Illinois, so I know a lot about that company. Anyway, their shares went down 3% at the open yesterday. That's a lot for that company in one day because, listen, they would lose a lot of business if Coke only went to pure cane sugar. But by the end of the day, Archer Daniels Midland's shares were only down slightly, not even 0.5%. So I think investors with skin in the game are going to wait this one out. And that's what's going on right there. Meanwhile, Coke shares were up almost 2% for the day. And that is probably because, hey, all advertising is good advertising. People are talking about Coca-Cola products. And I think some of the investors are saying, hey, people are talking about these products. There's probably going to be an initial buy if Coke either makes this complete transformation of cane sugar. People will start to buy it more, at least just for the fat of it, maybe for a little while. Or Coke might just release a little bit more pure cane sugar Coke, put it out as a new variety of the brand, and that too will probably boost sales, at least temporarily. That's what the people with skin in the game are telling us, and that's probably the story because they have money in that pot. All right, vaping king Juul has avoided execution. The FDA ended a years-long legal limbo for the vaping products yesterday. By the way, it could have ended with the government banning Juul altogether, but they decided not to do that. Now, let's make this something clear here. This does not mean that the FDA has approved Juul or vaping in particular, but what it does mean is that the FDA is finding that vaping is on a similar platform as tobacco products, and as long as the government hasn't completely banned cigarettes, they've taxed the heck out of them, we all know about that, and they've kept them from advertising on TV, et cetera, but the FDA decided that vaping is no worse than tobacco and they deserve the same rights, so they're on the same platform. So vape away, everybody, if you'd like. Another small victory in the hard war, the long war, a difficult war, to get prescription drug prices under control. Pfizer and Bristol Myers Squibb, two of the big pharma companies, announced yesterday that they've gone into a partnership to provide a blood thinner medication that is extremely necessary for a lot of patients out there called Eliquis to be sold directly to consumers, cutting out all the insurance middlemen. And some of the savings on this might be as much as 40% for people buying this drug. Now, this is all because of a Trump administration effort that's been going on really since the first term to find new and innovative ways to lower drug prices. You can be like Zoran Mamdani all you want and tell the drug companies to lower prices or else, which usually means or else. They'll close up shop. They might even go out of business. You got to find other ways that actually work. First, the Trump administration tried to get the drug companies to raise their prices elsewhere so that they could charge us less eventually. That worked a little bit, but didn't go as far as they wanted. Now they're trying things like this, where they're getting the drug companies to team up to go and jump over that middleman of the insurance companies and some of the other pharmacy situations. So this will help. Hopefully, there'll be more drugs like this where we find some savings. It's not easy, though. This is not an easy solution, and that is why people like Zoran Mamdani don't have the answer. You got to work hard at this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. This is Moving America, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTeaCo.com. Use promo code RAV for 10% off your first order. Artillery tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaCo.com, promo code RAV for 10% off of your first order. Hey, another big name company is making a big investment in EV robo-taxis. This time it's Uber, which is actually making its second big effort here to try to get into these self-driving cars and taxis. Its partner this time is a company called Lucid, Lucid. That's an American EV company. And that is, again, American-based. And their shares rose 5% yesterday on this news. And another 4% in the pre-market this morning. So this is an up-and-comer. Again, got to be careful, though. These projects sometimes crash and burn, no pun intended. But hey, this is a stock, Lucid, that still, even now, is trading for less than $1.25 a share. So if you like taking bets on long shots, this could be one. Again, I'm not giving you financial advice. I'm just stating a fact. It's a cheap stock right now at well under $1.25 a share, and it's been going up a lot on this news. As you know, I'm a fan of self-driving cars because I know so many people who are disabled in America. They're supposed to have transportation services that the government gives them. You know how well that works out. It doesn't. I feel very, very sorry for them. They are trapped in their homes. It's like a jail sentence. Self-driving cars is an absolutely liberating change for the millions and millions of disabled Americans who cannot drive on their own. And I think that they are still safer than most drivers. I'm sure a lot of you don't agree with me. You can tell me about that in Getter and Rumble chats. I can take it, but that's my position. Okay, the Trump administration has found an interesting new way to make sure the Biden team's drastically new increased fuel efficiency standards don't end up biting U.S. automakers. How are they doing that? Well, the White House is simply not going to collect any of the fines that the companies incurred under the Biden rules. Well, that's a good way to work around it. You don't have to wait for those rules to be rescinded, which is going to take a long process. It has to go through Congress. It's going to have to go through courts, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the whole situation with these activist judges. It's going to take forever. It may never happen. But if the government never actually collects the fines that these companies have incurred under the new rules, then they might as well not exist. Again, a new innovative way to solve a problem. Now, as I reported a few weeks ago, even when EV batteries permanently run out of enough juice to power a car, there's still enough left in them for other purposes. So now GM is getting in on this. Basically, they decided not to throw away something that's still valuable. This reminds me of my grandparents telling me not to throw out string and tinfoil. But hey, whatever works. GM is teaming up with a company called Redwood Energy to recycle EV batteries and use them for AI technology. By the way, this is just the latest example of how the country, both the private and the public sector, are starting to freak out about the realities of AI and how much power AI programming sucks out of the electrical grid. We need to come up with new ideas to power this sucker because it's a lot. Now, of course, a lot of companies are going to use smaller nuclear reactors to do this, and that's fine. But we got to come up with something. Again, I'm a big fan of nuclear power. That'll work, but it's going to take a while to get those reactors built. So GM going to use those EV batteries for something else when they run out in your car. Okay, I'm going to admit this to everyone. I admit it when I'm wrong, and boy, was I wrong about this. When Porsche first started making SUVs about 13 years ago, 12 years ago, I thought the idea would never fly, and it would become something like an Edsel joke. You know, a sports car company, a performance car company making SUVs. Who would want that? Well, boy, was I wrong. Porsche just made its 1 millionth Macan SUV. It was bought by a customer, fittingly in Germany, who bought it right off the line of the production company, the production factory in Leipzig. Again, 13 years of success for something I thought the sports car maker would not pull off. I was wrong. Boy, people really love SUVs, even if they say Porsche on them, or maybe I should say especially if they say Porsche on them. Congratulations. The customer, I guess, is not always right because they figured out a way to get the customer to want something the customer wasn't even saying that they said they wanted. Customers wanted SUVs, but I don't think they were knocking down the door at Porsche asking for a Porsche SUV. It's a good thing Porsche thought for itself. Okay, coming up, let's check in with the biggest red state of them all, Texas. First up, we're going to check in on the Ken Paxton, John Cornyn Senate battle in light of some personal news on that front. American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. It's Friday, July 18th. Here are this morning's top stories. President Trump has had it. Now that the Wall Street Journal is publishing a story insinuating that he may have been a closer friend of Jeffrey Epstein than we all thought, the president now wants all the Epstein files, or at least the ones he can get released now, released to the public, presumably to sweep that speculation aside. Beating the clock. The House votes 216 to 213 to pass that $9+ billion spending cut bill that includes eliminating all federal funding for NPR and PBS. President Trump will likely sign it today. Speaking of cutting off funding, Scott Bessent's Treasury Department slapped severe financial sanctions on the leaders of Tren de Aragua and other illegal alien gangs. By the way, the sanctions aren't so much meant for those gang leaders, but for those who dare to do business with them. And is this the time to be talking about some kind of amnesty bill? A couple of Republicans are supporting a plan to give a lot of illegals a pass. Now? Talk about very bad timing. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome to this Friday, No Tie Friday edition of American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining me in the Getter and Rumble chats and making sure that it is not a passive enterprise to watch television news anymore. You should be getting your voice heard, and we are watching. I am, at least. Welcome back. Joining us now is Texas conservative political strategist, and former statewide candidate Tom Slocum. Tom, listen, this is one of those things. It's funny. In conservative news media, we often spend a lot of time focusing on the craziness of New York and California or Seattle and all that stuff. And I feel like we forget to talk about the big red states. And there's no bigger red state, at least as far as total population and electoral college votes, than Texas. So we need to check in on Texas every once in a while. And you're the best guy to do that. So let's talk about what I think is, from an outsider to Texas's standpoint, the biggest story out of Texas over the last week. And then to these personal developments in the Ken Paxton versus John Cornyn Senate battle. We know that Ken Paxton's wife filed for divorce. We also know that John Cornyn is now personally asking President Trump to intervene and help him. So give us your take on what's going on in that race. Is it going to shake it up, or is this just this is going to be something that the campaign absorbs and they just move along?
Well, I think it's pretty funny. President Trump has actually made statements before about John Cornyn. In fact, he said he's criticized John Cornyn and said that his actions on various issues, including COVID, are major problems. And he said that John Cornyn will not win his next reelection when he said that. And then, that was many moons ago, right? And you can see that there's been a divided past between John Cornyn and Donald Trump's policies. They've come to butt several times over. In fact, John Cornyn went as far as to go on national TV on a major network and state that, Donald Trump is not the candidate for the Republican Party. All right. I mean, he suggested that Donald Trump shouldn't have been the nominee. And so this is all very funny now that John Cornyn is having to deal with this fallout. That's probably one of the biggest problems he's going to face besides his voting record. And so, Ken Paxton is going to be running on his record of what he's done here in Texas as a conservative. We know that he fights for Texans every single day. He launches new lawsuits. Every week it seems like he's going after someone for some reason, and it's a good reason. We want a strong attorney general in Texas that fights for us, and that's what we've had here. We know the difference between a real conservative warrior and someone that is just putting it on to fake it until they make it, and try to reach out to get Trump's aura, to get Trump's endorsement. And the worst part is that John Cornyn felt he needed to clip up a statement made by Donald Trump at a campaign rally this week and make it suggest like he was somehow endorsing John Cornyn, which is not true at all. And Laura Loomer actually pointed that out. I have to bring that up. It's a fact. It's a fact that his team edited this thing. It was highly edited, and it was made to look like Donald Trump was going to say something good about John Cornyn. The fact is that John Cornyn's down in the polls big time. All the polling that I have seen shows John Cornyn losing this race, and that's the reason the same donors that backed John Cornyn originally are now talking to Wesley Hunt and to Ronnie Jackson. And they would love Wesley and Ronnie to get into the race to try to stir things up. But as everybody knows here in Texas, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and, again, they're trying to make a big deal out of Ken Paxton's wife filing for divorce. First of all, it's 2025, not 1955 or 1935. And second of all, Tom, I mean, you got a whole song about it. All of my exes live in Texas. I mean, it's one of the best songs ever. I don't see how that's going to, I mean, it should really make that one of the warm-up songs at the rallies just to, one of my favorite PR strategies is to defuse the stuff that the other people are going to say about you. Embrace it. Play that song, All My Exes Live in Texas, and then they can move on. All right, there's another big name in Texas who's definitely getting a major primary challenge. That's Congressman Dan Crenshaw, and his challenger is a guy named Steve Toth. Tell us what's going on in that race, and tell us about those guys.
Oh, my gosh. This is another big one. Dan Crenshaw is going to get smoked in this race. I have been observing this congressional district CD2 here in Texas for several years, and my heart was warmed when I found out several months ago that Steve Toth, state representative who's from the area, his district, state representative district, is inside of CD2. I was very, very happy to hear that Steve was going to run against Dan. I was there at his campaign event just earlier this week where Steve announced his run. He had a packed room full of patriots that are ready to come out and volunteer and donate and do whatever it takes to get Dan Crenshaw out of there. Dan Crenshaw has embarrassed himself not only with the base but amongst the donors as well, and you can see that on his financial report. I think he's hanging around $500,000. There's another candidate in this race named John Bonk. John Bonk reported $448,000 raised this past week. We had a Texas Ethics Commission deadline filing date just a few days ago. And so we're able to see who's raising money in all these races. Dan Crenshaw is not, and the rumor is he flies first class 3 times a week from Washington, D.C. So if you add that up, it's about $50,000 worth of plane tickets a month. And we've got a long ways to go until March. So I guess he's going to be flying on points, I guess. He's going to have to figure out what to do with all this money and how he's going to survive. It's not a good situation to be in if your last name is Crenshaw right now, or if you're associated with the Crenshaw campaign. No one wants to help you. No one wants to donate to you. Your name is mud in the state of Texas, and that's a sad thing to happen, but that's what happens when an incumbent goes all the way out on the rails like Dan Crenshaw has. It's similar to John Cornyn. John Cornyn, being a U.S. senator, is a little bit smarter in what he says and what he does, but it's the same attitude and it's the same donor base.
Yeah. What a major fall from grace for Dan Crenshaw. I mean, it feels like it wasn't that long ago people were talking about him as a potential vice presidential candidate. His stock really did fall. Now, finally, Tom, again, this is what we like to do. We're focusing on this big red state of Texas and something that might have national implications. You tell me, you've been telling me that Republican powers in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott especially, has been pouring a lot of money into Harris County. Now, that's the county that includes Houston. That's one of the bluer areas of Texas. And for years, I guess a lot of conservatives and Republicans gave up on winning elections there. But there's been money going in not only for campaign funding, but also some Texas state funding to help some certain projects in those areas in the hopes of, I guess, flipping some of it red. Is this possible? Can Houston, or at least the areas around it, become also red for the state of Texas?
Yes, absolutely. I have never witnessed this amount of money being poured into Harris County and all my life, working in politics here and working in the energy industry. You can go back decades and decades. It wasn't too long ago Republicans controlled Harris County. We lost it in 2018 to the radicals in the Democrat Party, who had silently taken over the party and put their candidate Lena Hidalgo up. And now, we're stuck with basically a DSA county judge, a DSA attorney. And so when you have a district attorney and a county judge working together, the corruption gets really deep really fast. And we're having to combat this any way we can. Now, Greg Abbott has lots of aspirations in the future, but he has to win his gubernatorial campaign, and he has to crank up the voter turnout and get all of the voter data for everyone in Harris County done in a way that hasn't been done in years. So we have to take Harris County back. We haven't had any money to do this, and Greg Abbott and his campaign and his people, along with
Oh, we may have lost Tom there for a second there. This happens sometimes, especially when there's storms going across the country. That's okay. Listen, I'm just going to summarize again. You have Harris County, which includes Houston. That's been a blue bastion in Texas for a long time. There have been parts of Houston suburbs, I should say, that Republicans did control until about 2018, but they lost pretty much all control of it 7 years ago. But there's a lot of money. Oh, here's Tom. Tom, you still with us? You back with us?
Yeah, still with you. Sorry,
Okay.
we're having a connection issue. But, you know,
we got about 20 seconds. Go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, we lost a lot in 2018, and we're going to take it back this go around, this election cycle, and it's because we're investing so much into this county. It's never been a better time to be a Republican in Harris County. You know, we feel amazing about our opportunity here to really change the county better for the state of Texas, better for everyone, and hopefully set an example for other liberal counties like Bexar County, Dallas County, to go around and fix the rest of the state. Keep in mind, we also have redistricting coming, congressional redistricting, new
right.
maps being drawn. So lots of positive news here for Harris County.
All right. Thanks for that update. Again, Texas, the biggest red state of all. We can't just talk about New York and California for a laugh. We got to get our own ducks in a row, at least if you're a conservative. Tom Slocum, thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, David Brody and I will hold another journalism ethics seminar. Today's subject, the Wall Street Journal and this purported Trump letter to Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of things to sift through here. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It's a live look at New York Harbor. The tip of Manhattan is known as the Battery, and it looks like it'd be a halfway decent day here in the New York area. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. It is a No Tie Friday, well, at least for me. Of course, the big news breaking overnight is that President Trump is now calling for the release of a number of files because of this story that you see here in the Wall Street Journal. And I want you to pay attention to this headline, which I've taken care of thanks to the control room and our editors to quote exactly. Because it says in the headline that there was a birthday letter from Donald Trump. Now, if I were running the Wall Street Journal, if I were the executive editor, I would have said signed by Donald Trump or purported to be from Donald Trump. Even in the headline, I know it's a little clunky, but this is what's going to get them in trouble. I want to bring in David Brody here. Listen, we could go through the parts of the letter that have been released, run them through ChatGPT. It is really, I mean, if Donald Trump wrote that letter, I mean, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. But he could have signed off on it. All right, maybe. But that seems like a stretch. And I think that the article, the actual body of the article is what it is, as they say. Mm-hmm. But this headline, to me, David, this is the problem. It says in the headline definitively that it is from Donald Trump. That's not good. If I'm the lawyer for the Journal, I'm trying to. I got one word for you: settle, because President Trump says he's going to sue over this. We can talk about the political ramifications, but first, let's hit this journalistic aspect of it. As you know, David, the headlines are almost never written by the actual reporters on the story. I don't think the reporters on the story loved this headline. They might have liked it for the clicks, but this is what might get them in trouble.
That's exactly right, Jake. You summed it all up. That key word from Donald Trump? Really? Okay. Not exactly. As a matter of fact, not even close. And so I think this is a slam dunk in court for President Trump, just on that one word alone. Because if you go into the article, Jake, as we were talking about here, where's the there, if you will? I mean, where is it? I mean, I've read the article now 3 separate times trying to find it. It's not there. They even admit that, supposedly, allegedly, this is what we don't even know if it's in the current files. They don't really know at all exactly who actually wrote that or said that, or if it's even true. Look, there's a lot of things I want to discuss about this, and I guess we'll discuss a lot of it on American Sunrise. But, here's a couple of things that come to mind. So let me get this straight. First of all, why don't we talk about the media aspect of this for a moment before we get to one last point, which is, so just so I understand, what I don't understand is what the news value of this is exactly. So let's just say it's true. Let's just go with that for a second. Let's say it's true. What's the news value? Other than to, give Trump another bad headline? Seriously, I don't know what the news value is. Is the Epstein Files case, I thought, and I'm being facetious here, I thought it was all about the abuse of underage girls and all of the files associated with it, all the names. What does this letter from 22 years ago have to do with any of that? Other than to just, take a dig at Trump. Seriously, I don't understand the news value of it. The only thing I can think of, if they could have said, and this is one of the files currently that they are not releasing, that they've seen, and that would be different. That would be different. Yeah. There would be some news value. But even they admit in the story, they don't even know if this is part of the trundle of documents. So, I know I've got a lot of problems. Plus, it's been 22 years, and you're telling me that this is coming out after 22 years when Donald Trump has had, I don't know, maybe an enemy or two, or maybe tons, or maybe millions in the last 10 years especially. Yeah. So why is this coming out now? So, it just all doesn't add up. It doesn't add up.
Yeah. Well, I like to preempt lies on this program, and the next lie is going to come out and saying, well, the problem in this story is that Donald Trump pressured the Journal not to publish this. Hey, David, I know you just like me. I've gotten emails and nasty calls from presidents' administrations, from their staffers before. They do this all the time. That's not a story either. But his story is, you got to watch the next 2 hours of RAV, because American Sunrise is coming up. American Sunrise Early Edition will be back on Monday.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday.
Goodness gracious me, every single day there's something new. President Trump, of course, we'll play this later on. He's obviously trying to shift the focus away from the Epstein files and, in fact, praising the investigation from the FBI and the DOJ when it comes to weaponization of government. A stark reminder that there's still problems in this country that need to be fixed. And I, for one, and I think many Americans, have kind of let down our guard and thinking, okay, we got President Trump in, we can exhale. But Dr. Gina, the work still remains. There's still a lot of work to be done.
A lot of MAGA feels very personally really responsible for Donald Trump being there, and there's a real identity in that. And so this creates a sort of a psychological identity crisis that I'm not sure anyone was prepared for. I'm not sure MAGA was prepared. I'm seeing that I don't believe President Trump was prepared for this, and that's part of the drag. But that's because it is so personal.
Some of these names, many of these names actually, the ones that we don't know, are in redacted FBI affidavits that are sealed by judges. In other words, it's not Pam Bondi or President Trump or Kash Patel or Dan Bongino that can do anything about this. These are coming from judges that have sealed these documents. So let's see what the next move is by this administration. But that is an important point to understand here, that the judges have some power here, and let's not forget that.
We don't know what we don't know. Let's let things play out. Maybe there's stuff that's sealed that we don't know about. Maybe stuff that Pam Bondi doesn't know. But I think we must not get caught up in being so unhappy and never happy, as I said the other day, and focus on the good of what's going on in our country right now. And President Trump is leading us into a better America.
I trust the president. He's doing the right thing. The same thing when we were expecting airstrikes against nuclear facilities in Iran. I trust the president's judgment. It's the same thing here. He's going to do the right thing, even though I think his team fumbled the ball.
There is a political concern here, obviously, if some of MAGA stays home in 2026 and the numbers bear it out.
There has to be some sort of explanation, in my opinion, whether that's Pam Bondi coming out and addressing maybe the miscommunication. Something has to be done here because there are a lot of questions that remain that aren't being answered. And I dealt with that firsthand, especially this weekend, with a lot of those younger students.
We're not Gen Z, and I have kids that are, and I listen to them and I listen to their friends, and you are absolutely right about this. This is not going away.
Ahead on American Sunrise, the ghost of Jeffrey Epstein still alive. President Trump pushing back strongly against a new Wall Street Journal article revealing allegedly new details about his relationship with Epstein. All this as the president calls for the release of pertinent grand jury documents from the case. We have the very latest. Plus, in harm's way, new numbers on the assaults against ICE agents across America. What's being done about it? We take a closer look. And will the Big Apple turn into the Rotten Apple? What would happen if communist Zohran Mamdani wins the mayoral race in New York City? Donald Trump Jr. paints a very bleak picture. We're going to have those stories and much more as American Sunrise starts on a Freedom Friday, on a Puppy Friday. TGIF, everybody. We're going now. Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
We have breaking news to share with you.
politics,
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
we've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrence.
And I'm Dr. Gina. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Let's bring in David Brody. He's in Washington, D.C., and Terrence Bates is in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen.
Happy Friday, Gina.
Good morning.
Happy Friday.
Bates, good morning.
Yeah, it is a happy Friday also for people wanting more transparency as it relates to the Epstein files. It looks like we may be one step closer to that. President Trump asking Attorney General Pam Bondi to get court approval to release some of the grand jury information. So that seems to be a big step. And David and Dr. Gina, do you see this as somewhat of a reversal coming from President Trump, as he has initially called this and still is really calling this a scam and a hoax?
No, I don't think it's a reversal. I think it's a furtherance of what they should have done about a week ago. In other words, all along, Pam Bondi could have just called for the courts to open up and unseal these FBI affidavits. We've been talking about this on the show. Now they're finally doing it. So I just think that they've been late to the party on from a PR standpoint for a long time here. But we should be clear here. Just because President Trump says to Pam Bondi, go ahead, and make the petition, doesn't mean the court is going to agree. Pam Bondi has no power here. President Trump has no power here. It is the courts. It's the federal judge in the Southern District of New York that would have to allow those grand jury transcripts to be unsealed and unredacted. And it is federal law to keep grand jury transcripts confidential. So basically, the DOJ is going to have to make the case from a legal framework standpoint to go ahead and unseal this, but it's up to the judge, Gina.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend to completely understand what's going through the mind of everyone involved here right now, but I don't think, to me, this letter is just irrelevant. It's just irrelevant. It's stupid. I believe President Trump when he says it's fake. If it isn't fake, I still don't care. I just think it's irrelevant. You know, I personally still haven't understood from the beginning why we weren't exactly, as you said, David, doing what we're doing now. Like, this just seems like natural. Like, let's just ask. Let's just push. You know, the administration has earned this. The American people want this. So let's just push forward to try to get as much light shown on all of this as we possibly can, continuing in the tradition that is Trump transparency. He made that a thing. This is his to claim as his own, right? And to me, all of this backlash and everything should be directed at the courts, not at President Trump. Had this just happened maybe a week or so ago, I don't think we would have had any of these problems. Yeah, go ahead, David.
And G, I was just going to say real quick, what's the news value here exactly? This letter's been around for 22 years. First of all, you're telling, I say this letter, this alleged letter. Let's just go for a moment. Let's just say it's true for some reason, which I have a lot of questions about whether or not it's true at all to begin with. But it's been out there for 22 years. You're telling me that if this was out there for 22 years and Trump's enemies, and he's got plenty of them in the last 22 years, especially the last 10, knew about this, and they did, and you're telling me they didn't release it before the 2016 election, 2024 election? That doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's not like it's a newly released, unsealed court document or something that we didn't have access to. It's all kind of ridiculous, but I am glad that President Trump and Pam Bondi seem to be doing the right thing. Let's get to today's Bible verse. Acts 17:27 through 28. So that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. And also some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. President Trump now calling on Attorney General Pam Bondi, as we mentioned, to get court approval to produce pertinent grand jury documents from the Epstein files. President Trump posted on Truth Social, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam perpetuated by the Democrats should end right now. Bondi says they're ready to do it. This all came out late last night. For more, let's bring in Texas Congressman Randy Weber. Congressman, what is the mood on the Epstein files? What do you make of the last week that we've seen? And does this, and this is a really important question to me, it might seem like a sideline question, but does this heal the confusion among MAGA faithful?
Well, thanks for having me on, Dr. Gina. I appreciate that. And thank you for the Acts verse from the Bible. We appreciate that. The mood that I'm getting up here in Congress, well, let me go back to Pam Bondi first and what Trump has said, all pertinent grand jury testimony. Of course, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV, but I know that there are certain rules that have to be followed. And there may be some redactions in the offing, if you will, especially if there was undercover, agents or principals used, because they don't want to out that method, that mode. They're probably wading through that as carefully as they can, would be my guess. But I think Trump should get it released. He's already given, Attorney General Pam Bondi the green light. And my great district, 14, a lot of conservative Republicans and a lot of conservative Democrats too, for that matter, they'd like to see it. But y'all have already said it. Earlier on in the broadcast this morning, you said, why wasn't this stuff released? When Obama was in office, or O'Biden, I call him O'Biden because I think it was Obama's third term. Yeah. But why didn't they release it? What were they hiding? That's the $64 question.
It is.
I'd like to bring your attention to this Breitbart headline. It says 10 Republican legislators push amnesty dignity for illegal migrants. This obviously revives President Biden and the Bush-era programs for workers. Are we doing enough? Are you and your colleagues doing enough to really put more teeth behind illegal immigration policy that the Trump administration is pushing?
Well, I think so. Y'all probably may remember I spent 4 years in the Texas legislature before I got demoted to Congress. And I was vice chairman of the Borders Committee 2011 and 2012. It was really bad on the Texas border back then. I could tell you stories. We saw videos of drug runners, people running from the police, T-boning a Suburban in one of the Texas towns and killing all 5 people in the Suburban. We want to be sure that we have the appropriate kind of laws in place and that they're not taken advantage of, taken for granted, and that we don't get the sign hung out, come one, come all, you can get over here, and once you get over here, we'll give you amnesty. We've got to tiptoe through this very, very carefully, and I know our friends on the left hate ICE. They want to unmask ICE, literally. And they don't care that people are shooting at them and, seeking to harm our ICE agents. So we've got to be very careful and thoughtful about that. People cannot come here illegal. And guys and gal, people say, well, Randy, you just don't like immigration. And I said, that's not true. My grandfather and great-grandfather came over on the boat in 1903 from Germany. So we've got to do this thoughtfully, and we can't just blanket give amnesty to everybody.
Right. And Congressman, this is a rhetorical question, David. I want you to continue on with your questioning. But where's the outrage for the 300,000 missing children from these people that have all the outrage for the illegals? Sorry, David, go ahead.
Very nice. A rhetorical and a statement, full stop. Correct. All right, Congressman, this roll call headline obviously making news in Congress. It's now on the way to the president's desk for a signature. The House sending $9 billion. This recessions package to the president. We're talking about $8 billion in foreign aid funding, a little more than $1 billion in cuts to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Sorry, Oscar. Not really. Oscar will live another day. So will Bert and Ernie. So this is the beginning, I guess, of codifying these DOGE cuts. What do you think? I mean, how many more rescission packages do you expect to see? I mean, Congress is normally the golden corral of spending, all you can spend.
Well, I got involved in Republican Party politics, David, when Reagan ran for re-election in '83. What's that? 42 years ago. And we had the saying back then, Congress has too much waste, fraud, and abuse. We're finally doing something about that with our great President Trump. And when Elon Musk was was at the helm, so to speak, in DOGE. And so if you read all the rescissions, things like $1 million for voter ID in Haiti, $6 million for net zero cities in Mexico, and $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street. You can't make this stuff up. 33,000 for being LGBT in the Caribbean, and all kinds of stuff like that in these other foreign countries. Tell me how that helps Americans. It doesn't. And so I think you're going to see some more rescissions package. I hope we are. Sure. And I'm a very conservative district. And I hope that we cut out the spending and get on the right track finally.
Well, Congressman Randy Weber, we appreciate you nobly taking that demotion from the State House to Congress. Sounds like you're doing a pretty good job there, and we thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much for that, y'all.
God bless. All right, coming up, Terrence Bates is going to give us a live update from Israel on the ceasefire negotiations. And also later, the Trump administration has touted the success at the southern border. What more can be done? We're going to take a look ahead on American Sunrise.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
It's a live look at the United States Capitol. I was going to say something snarky like I normally do about Congress, but I'm going to reserve my words this morning. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Coming up, ICE agents under assault, like literally under assault. Tons of assaults, an increase. And wait till you hear the number of how many assaults are taking place against our ICE agents across the country. First, though, T. Bates standing by with our next guest, who you know well, and he's reporting from Israel, and it's all sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Israel has submitted proposed maps withdrawing IDF forces during a ceasefire. Israeli media now also reporting that officials have softened their stance and are ready to make some concessions. Israel also would reportedly give up the Morag corridor in southern Gaza in a proposed ceasefire deal with Hamas. Hamas is said to be reviewing that proposal. For more, let's bring in RAV correspondent Oscar El Blue Ramirez. Oscar, you are there at the border with Syria.
let's start there because there had been attacks from Israel into Syria earlier this week. What's the latest situation between those two countries?
Well, we're located in the Druze community right now, just a couple of blocks away from here. The signal's pretty bad on that area, but there's a big protest going on in Syria. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu has gave out clear statements to say that he is going to do the best that he can to protect the Druze community inside of this civil unrest that has been consistent, that has landed, Terrence, in more than 500 casualties as it is right now after the two perfect airstrikes from the Israel authorities into the ministerial government of establishments. It has calmed down, but still the Syrian authorities have said that they are going to try to move inside different locations and different territories to see if they can just continue with this civil unrest, sadly.
Has there been retaliation from the Syrians or even other proxies within the Middle East against Israel?
That is one of the things that